Hello, everyone. It's Melanie Ann here, out to finally answer the question people always ask me: who can have positive mental health? Is it people without a diagnosis of mental illness, or is it also for people who live with a mental illness? In other words, those who have been diagnosed with a condition that significantly interferes with a person's cognitive, emotional, behavioral, or social abilities. So let's find out. I want to start with my definition of mental health. I believe that when we are mentally healthy, we are enjoying emotional well being and we are employing positive coping strategies. The definition of mental health that you might have been taught might lean more heavily on one of these components, but I believe that both are needed. If I hadn't committed to making this video just 5 minutes long, I would also give you an example of why both components are equally important, and we would dive deeper into what makes a coping strategy positive versus negative. But I'm here to answer only one question, which is who can have positive mental health? So let's find the answer using this diagram from Corey Keyes' work. Many of you have been taught that mental health exists along only one axis. On one end, you might find someone who is languishing with poor mental health. On the other end of the spectrum, you would find someone who is flourishing with optimal mental health. But this diagram doesn't take into account the lived experience of people who do and do not live with a mental illness. So we've got to add another axis. This time, on one extreme to infinity side of this axis is a person who has absolutely no symptoms of mental illness and who never will. On the other extreme is a person who has every single symptom of mental illness. Remember, both of the ends of these axes are extreme. Most people live somewhere in between. For example, a person might get diagnosed with clinical depression without demonstrating every single symptom listed in the DSM, while another person may never get a diagnosis of clinical depression, but might experience some symptoms in the DSM, but not enough to merit a mental illness diagnosis. Okay, let's look at who might live in each of these quadrants. Let's start with the upper left quadrant. This person has a diagnosis of mental illness and is employing positive coping strategies that allow them to enjoy emotional well-being. The person on the upper right quadrant does not have a diagnosis of mental illness, but what do you notice is the same as the person on the left? Both are employing positive coping strategies, and currently they are both enjoying emotional well-being. The strategies, frequency, or intensity that each of these people use to enjoy emotional well-being may look different from each other, but both can definitely have positive mental health. Now, let's look at the person in the bottom right quadrant. This person does not and will never have a mental illness, but right now they're struggling. It could be that the positive coping strategies they normally use to enjoy emotional well-being are not working anymore, or that something has happened in their life where they don't have access to a positive coping strategy that can help right now, or they are relying on a negative coping strategy as a quick fix. Therefore, this person who will never develop a mental illness is experiencing poor well-being right now. Let's contrast that with the person in the bottom left quadrant. This person has a mental illness diagnosis and is also struggling for one of the same reasons I've already mentioned. Their positive coping strategies aren't working right now, or are unavailable or unused. So the difference is that we often stereotype people with mental illness as living their whole life in that bottom left quadrant. But that's simply not true. Throughout their lives, people with mental illness find themselves occupying the top and bottom left quadrants, depending on what's going on in their lives and the resources they have access to, just like people who will never be diagnosed with a mental illness. So, who can experience positive mental health? The answer is everyone. And more people, those with and without diagnoses of mental illness, have the opportunity to thrive when we partner with them to be one of their sources of support. Thanks for watching.